Have you ever noticed how you can spot Adidas from a mile away? No logo needed, no brand name screaming for attention, just three simple stripes? They're everywhere, on shoes, jackets, tracksuits, even socks. They're so familiar that most of us never stop to ask the obvious question: why three? Why not two stripes, or four, or a lightning bolt, or some abstract symbol dreamed up by a designer in a glass-walled office? The truth is, Adidas's three stripes weren't born from a flashy marketing meeting. They came from practicality, stubborn vision, and a series of almost accidental decisions that ended up shaping one of the most recognizable symbols in human history. And once you know the story, you'll never look at those stripes the same way again. Let's explore right here on History of Simple Things. To understand the stripes, we have to go back to post-World War II Germany, where a shoemaker named Adolf "Adi" Dassler was rebuilding his life and his business from scratch. Dassler had already been making athletic shoes before the war, but in the late 1940s, he formally founded what would become Adidas, a name stitched together from his nickname and last name. At the time, Adidas wasn't thinking about global branding or fashion statements. The company's focus was purely functional, making better sports shoes that helped athletes perform better. Early Adidas shoes needed reinforcement along the sides to provide stability, especially for runners and football players who put enormous lateral stress on their footwear. So Dassler added strips of leather to the sides of the shoes. These strips weren't decorative, they were structural. They held the shoe together and helped support the foot. Function came first, and style followed later. But here's where things get interesting. Adidas didn't originally invent the idea of stripes on shoes. In the early 1950s, Dassler actually purchased the rights to a three-stripe design from a Finnish sportswear company. That company had been using stripes as a visual identifier, but on a much smaller scale. Dassler saw potential. He believed that three stripes struck a perfect balance, enough to be distinctive, but not so many that they cluttered the design. Two stripes felt too plain. Four felt excessive. Three was just right. Once Adidas adopted the design, Dassler applied it consistently, across shoes, then apparel, then everything the company produced. Over time, those three stripes stopped being just reinforcement and started becoming a signature. As Adidas grew, the meaning of the stripes evolved. They began to represent performance, discipline, and progress. In fact, Adidas later explained that the three stripes symbolized a mountain, each stripe representing a challenge an athlete must overcome. When you look at the stripes angled upward on certain Adidas logos, the mountain imagery becomes clear. It's a visual metaphor: struggle, effort, and ultimately achievement. Whether or not that symbolism was fully intentional from the beginning, it fit perfectly with the brand's identity. Adidas wasn't selling fashion first. It was selling the idea of pushing your limits, training harder, and striving to be better than yesterday. What truly cemented the stripes into global culture, though, was consistency. Adidas didn't constantly redesign or reinvent its visual identity. While many brands chased trends, Adidas doubled down on the stripes. Athletes wore them in the Olympics. Footballers wore them in World Cups. Runners wore them on record-breaking tracks. And later, musicians, breakdancers, and streetwear icons adopted them as symbols of authenticity and rebellion. By the time hip-hop culture embraced Adidas in the 1980s, the stripes had already transcended sport. They were no longer just about performance, they were about identity. Another reason the three stripes worked so well is psychological simplicity. Humans are remarkably good at recognizing patterns, and 3 is a powerful number. It's visually balanced, easy to remember, and instantly recognizable even in motion. When an athlete sprints past you, you might not read a logo, but you'll see the stripes. When a footballer slides across the pitch, the stripes cut through the blur. Adidas understood this intuitively long before modern branding theory put it into textbooks. The stripes didn't need explanation. They spoke for themselves. Ironically, Adidas's greatest branding strength almost became a legal weakness. Because the stripes were so simple, Adidas spent decades defending them in trademark disputes around the world. The company argued that even 2 or 4 stripes could confuse consumers because the association with Adidas was so strong. While not every case went in Adidas's favor, the fact that the brand could even make such arguments shows just how deeply the 3 stripes had embedded themselves into public consciousness. Very few design elements are that powerful. Today, the 3 stripes represent something far bigger than a shoe reinforcement invented in post-war Germany. They stand for heritage, credibility, and timelessness. In a world where logos constantly change and brands fight for attention, Adidas proves that sometimes the strongest identity comes from doing less, not more. 3 stripes, no slogans needed, no explanation required. Just a symbol that has endured for more than half a century, carried by athletes, artists, and everyday people alike. So the next time you see those 3 stripes, remember, they're not just decoration. They're a reminder that some of the most iconic ideas start with simple solutions to practical problems, and that when something works, truly works, you don't need to change it. You just let it run. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.